Hi, everybody. Welcome to Harmon Speaks. We have a very unusual show today. Knoxville, as you know, is under 75 feet of snow or none. It depends on where you are, I guess. There is no snow outside of my window. There's a little ice on my car, but schools are called off again tomorrow. That's great. We can have my 16-year-old around all day. Super. I'm for it. So, in the meantime, we're going to have a really great show tonight. I'm very excited about my guest. We have Eliza Scott Jones, and we're going to talk a little bit about invisible disabilities. Hi, Eliza. How are you?
Hi, Gary. I'm doing well. It's good to be on the show.
Thank you. It's good to have you. It's very good to have you. Now, you and I have talked about this, and the discussion of invisible disabilities is an important one. Tell me why it's important for you.
I actually am a person who suffers from an invisible disability, and that term is really funny because sometimes it's very visible, but
Okay.
it's just usually not during times that other people are going to see me because I'm so sick that I'm not going to be out and about. I'm going to be taking care of my symptoms or I'm going to be in a hospital.
Oh,
So,
okay.
to me, it's really important because I think people sometimes assume that if someone looks healthy, that they are healthy. If they look like they
Okay.
don't have a disability, then they must not have a disability. And so
Right.
it can lead to some issues with being understood.
Okay. Well, let's get into the meat of the issue then. You have something called mast cell disease. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I've been practicing that all afternoon. Would you tell me what mast cell disease is?
Yes, you say it very well.
Well,
Uh,
it's the reason I did not go to medical school, but I'm trying really hard to understand. So please enlighten us.
oh, absolutely. Thank you for asking. So,
Sure.
mast cell disease is actually a rare disease, which is why a lot of people haven't heard of it because they don't need to know about it until they do.
Okay.
So it involves a part of the immune system where there's a special cell involved called a mast cell, M-A-S-T, like the mast of a ship. And that cell sort of operates like a pharmacy within the body. So that cell actually stores up chemicals to have them at the ready in case your body needs it. And in healthy people, everything works great. Those mast cells, they can release chemicals in order to help fight infection. They can release chemicals in order to help heal wounds. But in someone with the disease state like I have, they misbehave or the person has too many of them. And so when they release their chemicals, it causes sort of an overwhelming response in many organs in the body. So
Okay.
these cells can store up somewhere between 200 and 1,000 different chemicals. Reasonable minds can differ, and there's still a lot of research going on, but these chemicals are really potent. So we're talking about chemicals that can drop a person's blood pressure to where it can no longer sustain life, or a chemical that could close someone's throat up where they can't breathe. And so it can be life threatening.
Okay. So the cells of your body overreact is that a good way to put it? If something initiates these feelings, like if you're coming into a contact of a scent of something that would bother you or a taste or whatever, that causes an overreaction from your body.
Exactly right. Some people have disease where their mast cells fire at the wrong times or they
Right.
fire too much, and some people have too many of the cells in their body, and so they might fire at the right time, but because they have so many and maybe they all go off at once, it can cause a problem.
Okay. All right. And what sort of things can cause the mast cell reaction?
So, a lot of times, mast cell disease patients can have a variety of triggers. And
Okay.
this is one of the really frustrating parts of the illness and the disability. It's very disabling, is because triggers can vary over time and they can vary from patient to patient. And so it's really a process of a patient, going through their life with their physician. You end up having to keep a journal. A lot of mast cell disease patients have to keep a food and medication journal. They have to talk about what they did that day to try to figure out what their triggers are. But at the end of that process, a lot of mast cell disease patients find that they are triggered by food, medications, insect bites or stings, different odors, fragrances. Some people actually react to vibration. So the simple act of riding in a car can send them into a severe reaction. Sunlight, all kinds of things. And so mast cell disease patients really have to be very careful about things that would not pose a threat to a healthy person.
Okay. When your body reacts, you're telling me that you don't always know what's going to make it react. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I can eat a food today and it might not bother me, but I could eat the same food tomorrow and it might cause a problem.
Wow. Well, how do you survive with this?
You have a lot of medications at the ready. So I have auto injectors for epinephrine in the event that I'm in a situation where my blood pressure is too low or my throat is closing. So I have EpiPens, and then if I take that, I have to go straight to the emergency room because there's always a risk for heart damage or cyclical anaphylactic reaction anytime someone takes an EpiPen. So that's something I do. And then I take daily medication to try to help keep me more stabilized. So I take a lot of different medications in order to try to keep my baseline stable, but no matter what, there's always going to be triggers for any mast cell patient that are going to set them off even with the medication. And so it is actually really important to avoid triggers. A lot of mast cell patients, and I'm no exception, we find that there are some triggers that are consistent. So like for me, a lot of fragrances and perfumes is a trigger that's been very consistent for me. I've not had any chance to have a breather from that, no pun intended. But yeah, but my food triggers kind of have come and gone over the course of my life. Right now, I'm in a particularly bad low with my illness, and so I'm down to about 8 to 10 foods that my body will tolerate.
Wow. I do that much in a snack, so that's a little scary. How do you avoid all of these threats?
So at different points in my life, it's taken different things in order to avoid them. So when I'm doing better, a lot of times I can, go to a restaurant and sit on a patio where I'm not going to smell so many things as I would inside, or I can be careful what I eat, take my own food with me, that sort of thing. But when I'm as severe as I am right now, I'm actually living my life in my bedroom for pretty close to a year now because I have to have some serious air filtration equipment in order to keep me well. And that's not something I can take with me anywhere. Yeah, so it's very disruptive to my life right now. I'm limited in what I can eat, and I'm essentially a prisoner of a single room in my home. Our house is new to us, but not new to me and my husband. And the person that lived here before had a love of fragrance. And so they left the house with a lot of fragrance in it. We've tried a lot of things to rid it of that, but we've not been successful to the point that I can move about the house freely. If I leave the room where I have these really expensive chemical air scrubbers and HEPA filters, I have to wear a mask over my face that's not something way more than a HEPA. So I'm wearing like a commercial grade respirator with gas filtration bayonet cartridges in order to leave my bedroom and be safe. So anywhere I go around town or anything that I do, I have to wear that. And it's not something you can wear for hours and hours on end. So it limits the amount of time I can be outside this room.
Okay, why can you not wear it for a long time? Is it uncomfortable, or does it stop working? What happens?
So it's not safe. It's not recommended for anyone to wear that level of air filtration because it puts an additional strain on your cardiovascular and lung systems to be pulling air through that and exhaling through it. It's not like an N95, which it has almost no air resistance. This one actually does have some resistance to it, and so you're working your cardiovascular and lung system is a little bit harder in order to have that on. And then it is painful after a while. It's heavy on the face. And so I end up with bruising on my bridge of my nose if I wear it too long.
Right. Has it taken you a long time to learn how to stay sane in a room?
Well, I don't know how sane I'm staying, Gary.
Right. I got to tell you that in preparation for this today, I'm speaking to you from my office at my house, and I've been in here for about 3.5 hours doing nothing important, but just goofing off and laughing at the amount of snow. But I told my wife right before we started this, I was about to burn the house down. And she assured me when this is over, I can come out, as long as I don't get anywhere near her or the kids. So I don't know how you do this. It boggles my mind.
Well, there's nothing like not having a choice, really. I am an extrovert's extrovert and a people person. And so before this flare, I was hardly ever home. Before COVID and before this flare, I was hardly ever home. I'm a member of several dance troupes in the Knoxville area, and I loved to be out riding my bike and out hiking and with my dog at the park and meeting friends at restaurants. And it has been hard. It has been extremely hard. But when you're facing potential death, it's amazing how motivating that is, actually.
I can imagine. Tell me where you find joy.
Oh, so many places. There's always joy to be had if you just keep looking for it. So I have an awesome husband who's incredibly supportive and loving, and we have a great time. He's a hoot, and we just have a blast, even if we are just, restricted in what we can do. He's really funny and charming. And very pretty. Go, Mark.
That's great.
Yes, and I have a lot of really good friends. So one of the things that was really useful over the last year was there's a national society called the Mast Cell Disease Society.
Okay.
And they do research and patient education, physician education, and patient advocacy. And they had their conference this past year, and that was just amazing. Like, I just thank God for them because I got to meet like 100 people that have the same exact problems that I do. Right. And I got to hear from researchers and physicians from Harvard and Johns Hopkins and Rutgers and Brigham and Women's, and they're talking about my situation as if it's not weird. Because it's not weird to them anymore. They do this for a living. Mm-hmm. And so it really helped me kind of accept more deeply my situation, but it also gave me a chance to make some friends who have the same illness, and we have just had a blast. I don't know if you know any folks that are police officers or nurses or doctors, but the humor can get kind of dark. Right. Because we can joke with each other that way, and it's just we kind of have our own language, and I would not trade those people for $1 million. So technology has been really helpful. I've been so grateful that people have started embracing technology more with the whole pandemic that's going on. And so people have learned how to use Zoom, and they've learned, how to do these things. So I've learned how to watch a video with someone in another state online together. And I've learned how to play games online and websites that I can go and play games with people and things like that. But it is hard. It's very restrictive and it's very isolating. And so I do get lonely. As an extrovert, it's really hard.
Right.
Yeah.
I can understand that. I can. Well, I think that's amazing that you find these areas where you can find joy and people you can find joy with. One of the messages of this show, I think, is regardless of the disability, there is love and support out there, that you don't have to be all by yourself, even if you're physically in the room by yourself. And so that gives me hope to hear you say this. And I think it's very important that everybody hears that message. So, so you've talked a little bit about the symptoms, and what do we need to know as your friends about what can cause you to have a reaction?
I think In terms of, talking to someone that might have a mast cell disease or some other kind of allergic type condition, which is separate and different,
Right.
but similar symptoms, it's just really important to listen to the person.
Uh-huh.
If they tell you I can't do X or whatever, as ridiculous as it might sound to you, that's going to be true for them. Because if they're telling you they need something ridiculous, it's just as hard for them to ask for it as it is for you to hear it. It may be more so. And so I would just say to keep an open mind. And also, it's really hard for mast cell disease patients to accept that these things are happening to them. It's really easy for us to go into denial and say, there's no way that, that smell is making me have anaphylaxis. There's no way that just riding in a car could be a problem for somebody with all of these multi-system issues, right? And so we do that to ourselves. And it's this process of, talking to doctors and getting the blood work done and getting the testing done and talking to nurses and talking to people at the society. And we have to go through this process of accepting that this is real and this is really a thing and this is what's happening to us. And so I would just say for people interacting with someone who might have this disease or something similar, just be mindful of that and try to be compassionate with that and understand that this person has already gone through a process of disbelieving this illness themselves. And so they need you to listen and believe them. I say that would be the biggest message that I would have for folks interacting with people with my disabilities.
Right. Are you from this area originally or have you moved here?
I'm originally from Middle Georgia, go
Okay.
south. But I've been in Knoxville since 1989, so I feel free to call it my home now
Okay.
and claim that I'm a Knoxvillian at this point. Yeah, I went to Oak Ridge High School and I went to UT twice, and once for undergrad and once for a graduate degree.
Right.
So yeah, I'm a hometown Knoxville gal now.
Okay. Well, that's great. Did you have any trouble finding medical help in this area?
Yes, it's been a challenge. So not only do normal everyday people have issues hearing about mast cell disease and trying to get their head around that and that it's real, but physicians get very little training on mast cell disease in medical school because, of course, they have to cover the things that are most common. And so the rare diseases aren't really focused on because there's just not enough time to focus on 7,000 different rare diseases, right? So yeah, it's been a little bit of a struggle. There aren't any mast cell disease experts in East Tennessee, and I have had the pleasure though of finding some really great physicians who are willing to consult with specialists out of state, and they have gone the extra mile for me. And so I love some of my physicians. I would not trade them for $1,000,000, and I just thank God for them because they've been willing to learn about it. And any physician can diagnose this condition. There is a diagnostic criteria that is not up for question. So it's just a matter of looking at the person, taking down their symptoms, running the tests, and anyone can make the diagnosis.
Right. I've noticed that there are several groups of people you would not trade for $1,000,000. You are an optimist. I know a few I would. I just want to put it out there. Okay, just a couple more things. Give me an idea of when you are out and about in the world, how do people respond to you?
Oh, that has been difficult.
Right.
It's mixed. When I leave this room, obviously I can't take my air filtration giant, 3 foot tall, 1.5 foot wide air filtration unit with me. So I have to put on the mask. And especially with a lot of the pandemic politics, like I'm just getting ground into the dirt over some of the pandemic politics going on and prejudices on both sides. So I've had people try to take pictures of me. I've had people laughing at me. I've had people hanging out of their car windows screaming at me while I'm driving to a doctor's appointment. It's been kind of surprising. At the same time, there have been people who've been great. So I've helped educate some folks at my local pharmacy about my condition, and now when I pull up to the drive-through window, they're not surprised anymore.
Right.
There was one lady one night I drove up in the evening, and she actually said, "Oh, that's scary," when
Is
she
this
saw me
because of something you're wearing?
it's the mask on my face,
Mask. Okay.
because
Okay.
it's way more than what people would see in everyday life. It's way above and beyond what people would wear for COVID. So it really stands out. It's large. It covers most of my face, and it's unusual. So I have had a hard time with that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. I keep thinking that if I wore something like that, I would scare less people rather than more. So, but I'm sorry about the reaction. What do you do to help you recenter yourself when you run into a bad reaction like that?
When someone's like that, if I'm on the road, I just crank up my music and I just start drumming away on my steering wheel. And you can still tell that someone's smiling because their eyes squint up.
Sure.
And so I'll just look at them and I'll just smile and I'll wave and,
Mhm.
bebop to my music and then just go on down the road.
Right.
Because it's not going to make any difference from their side. They're going to think what they want to think. But it makes a difference for me. I need to feel comfortable in my own vehicle. And
Mhm.
so I've found that just kind of going over the top with trying to behave as if I feel comfortable
Mhm.
does help me on the inside actually calm down.
Right.
And I try to just use humor. You know,
Mhm.
I turn it into something funny because I'm not gonna follow them, in their
Right.
car and
Right.
try to explain mast cell disease to them. They wouldn't listen anyway.
Mhm.
So I'm left with few options, and so I just decided to do what's best for me in that
Mhm.
situation.
That sounds like a good idea. It
Hey,
sounds
hey,
like it.
Gary. Gary, it's
Yeah.
Neil. Oh
Hi,
my
Neil.
gosh, it's me.
Please don't be afraid, everybody. This is Neil. All right. Go ahead, but he hasn't
Hey,
been out of the house
so
like either because his wife does not think he's pretty. So she keeps him locked in the basement,
you're
just like my
mean.
wife does me. And we never get, she just throws bacon down the stairs. And I'm okay. I'm sorry, Neil. Go ahead, buddy. What do you want to ask?
She throws bacon down the stairs. I love it.
That's how it is.
So I do
Yes.
have a question.
Go.
I know your this condition. I've never heard of mast. I have never heard of this
Yeah, I
condition.
haven't either.
It's amazing.
Mhm.
And you have basically been. I want to make sure that the Harmon Speaks viewers understand that you have basically been in your. You said your bedroom, right? For a year and a half or more. No, it's almost 2 years.
Well, a little over a year.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. So, are any of the vaccines that are available are those a viable option for you?
Well,
Given
so that's a great question. My situation is actually completely unrelated to COVID. Um, so I'm not holed up in my bedroom because of COVID. I'm holed up in my bedroom because if I leave my bedroom, I could have what's essentially like a severe allergic reaction to something I'm smelling or something I'm touching. And so, pandemic or not, I would still be in my bedroom. In terms of vaccination, thank the Lord, vaccines have not been a big trigger for me. They are for many mast cell disease patients, and so I got my vaccine as quickly as I possibly could, since my body's already releasing chemicals, which include cytokines. I don't know if you've heard of cytokine storms when it comes to
Never,
COVID being a
never
problem
heard
for
of that.
people.
No.
So my mast cells already release these chemicals, and that's one of the things that's causing people with COVID to have severe reactions to the actual disease. So I do need to avoid COVID, um, just like everybody else. But but I would be in my bedroom, pandemic or not.
Right. Right. That's
That's a
amazing.
great question.
It is. It's great. Great point to point out. Um, what can your friends do to support you more?
I've got some really great friends, so I'm not sure what that would be. I don't think my mind tends to work that way.
Right.
um, but if I on the spot think about it, I think, I mean, I've just got some really world-class friendships. And I just thank God for them. Seriously, I'm gonna get choked up. um, they've just been great. Phone calls, video calls, Facebook, messaging, talking to me about the condition. I did want to say one more thing about Neil's question with COVID. You know,
Okay.
that's one of the narratives that I think people get in their mind about me when I'm driving around with the mask and all this stuff is I think they think, you know, and like my neighbor across the street who was trying to take pictures of me in my yard.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think what's probably going through their head is they look at me and they think, wow, that's someone that's just terrified of COVID, like
Hmm.
comically terrified of COVID,
Right.
to be wearing all this in their own yard, right? But
Hmm.
that's not what's going on. And so I don't get the opportunity to explain myself to people as they're going by or as they see me in traffic. And it's really a shame
No, or
because,
should you have to?
Right.
well,
I agree.
there's that.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's interesting the narratives that people make up about others that may or may not be true.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. I'm sure that
Right.
people with all kinds of disabilities go through that, where someone will see them. You know, I heard of someone who thought that Down syndrome could be contagious, right?
Right.
So they just
Right.
made up this story in their head. We don't know from where.
Right.
It's not based on any science or anything that's in reality. But and then it's really hard to dislodge those opinions, right?
Right. Yeah.
Even if I come to someone later and I do get the chance to talk to them about mast cell disease, in the back of their mind, I can see they're suspicious, you know,
Right.
that like, no, I think you're just afraid of COVID. And it's like, no, I'm afraid of your laundry detergent, buddy.
Wow. Right. Right. Well, I did know a young lady in college who said she wouldn't go out with me because I don't have hands. And I said, well, that's unfortunate because I wanted to talk about typing and playing the piano all night. So, okay, you never know what people are going to tell you about that sort of thing or how they're going to react. So, one of the purposes of this show is to say to folks, we're human first, and whatever our disability may be, that's just um, a detail that we live with and must function with. And if you want to know about us, ask. Don't make up a narrative in your head. I don't know how many people have thought if they touch this hand, their fingers may fall off. I don't know that that's ever happened to anyone. I have kids, they have a lot of fingers. I don't know how many, I've never counted, but they have a bunch of, don't y'all have 10 of those? Yeah. And they haven't fallen off. And I hold their hand all the time. So I understand the ridiculousness of how some people can react. And I hope that by doing this show, we're building a bridge to people and they will understand that we're all human and in this together. How you feel
Yes,
about that?
I preach. That's all I can say about that. Preach, brother. I've been watching your videos on your YouTube channel and I have subscribed and I am a Harmon Speaks enthusiast. So I really appreciate what you're doing on this channel and it makes a difference. Any one person that can then explain to someone else or help calm someone down or,
Mhm.
you know, fight that weird narrative, that's useful to the person with the disability somewhere down the road. So I just really appreciate you and the work that you're doing on this channel. Um, yeah, but
I really appreciate it.
the
I really
narratives are
appreciate that.
hard. That is such a hard thing, and I understand where it comes from. Human beings want to make things make sense.
Right,
They want to do it quickly.
right,
But the part that bothers me is then not being open to hear something different.
right.
It's like, okay, fine. You might come up with something quickly in order, you know, to have a framework to start from. But when you're confronted with different information, try to accept it. You know, the person that's living with it knows way more about it than you do.
Right, right. There's a very famous, I think she's a sociologist named Brene Brown. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she writes a lot about how people make up dialogues in their head to feel what they don't know. And that's a very dangerous thing because I don't have the creativity to think of what you're going through. I'm better off to ask you. And so I know that that is one of my major sins. I do imagine dialogues that haven't happened. And I say, well, they're not talking to me because, and I may not have an idea. And I make this up too quickly. So I don't throw stones at everybody else for doing this. I hope we can all stop doing it and learn to listen to one another and trust one another and learn to live together instead of separately. I
Yes.
really, really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you. You've earned a new friend here. I think two. I think Neil's going to be your friend too.
Oh, very definitely.
Be careful of that though, and I'll tell you why later. But
Hey, scallywags know other scallywags when we find them.
Oh,
yeah,
I knew I liked you.
scallywag is a great word. That's a great word. He's going to run around all night in his house going, "I'm a
I know.
scallywag." And his wife
In
will
my
yell,
mind, I look like Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean. Now I'm look like Johnny Depp.
Neil, no.
Oh, stop it! No, I don't
I'm
need
your
no.
friend. I can't lie to you. No, you do not.
It reminds me of that scene in Star Wars where Han Solo gets called a scoundrel, and he's just so enthralled with the word scoundrel. You
So
know.
now you've thrown Star Wars into the mix. You are my new friend. So
Yes.
there you go.
Hey, can I say one more thing real quick before we go?
Sure, please do.
I just really want to stress this idea that just because someone doesn't look sick or doesn't look like they have a disability doesn't mean that they don't. So I just really want to stress this point. You're not going to see me when I'm throwing up for hours at a time, or my blood pressure is 75 systolic, or I'm covered in hives, or my throat is closing. I'm not coming to see you. I'm not going to be in Target. I'm not going to be driving my car. I'm going to be in an emergency room or my bathroom downing a bunch of medications. So, yeah, I think that's just something I really want to make people aware of. Is like, someone might not look sick to you. It's because you're not seeing them when they're symptomatic.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to have to sign off now. But I do want you to know how much I appreciate you being on the show. I feel like this is a very important episode. People need to hear about this and learn about it and understand it. And you're a great spokesman for Mast.
Thank you.
So thank you for doing that.
There's going to be more probably with long COVID. There's been some connections with long COVID and mast cell disease. So people might actually run into more people like me.
Right, right. So those of you out there not wearing masks, how about giving it a try? There's some people could really appreciate that. And I also told my wife yesterday that you thought your husband was, quote, beautiful. And she said, and I quote, good for her.
Oh, dear.
She didn't return it, but that's okay. I understand. I'm going to go cry now. So thank you for being on our show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank everybody else for watching. We really appreciate your viewership. Thank you for turning into this show. There are about 63 others. If you want to get some variety, go check them out. Please like and subscribe. We're trying really hard to survive with this thing. So please help us out with doing that. And please know that we are hoping for a more inclusive and understanding world. Please join in. That's why we're doing this. So thank you on behalf of me and Neil for you chiming in and helping out. Please leave some comments if you want to see some improvements. Otherwise, I'll just look like this. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Eliza. I appreciate it. Thank you, Neil, for the magic you do. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.